Hey everybody, happy Sheldon's birthday. I am your first host of EDHTakes, Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm your second host, Spencer Cook.
And Spencer, yeah, like I mentioned, it's Sheldon's birthday today, along with Rebel AI, if you know her content at all.
Mm-hmm. And Michael Lynch from I Hate Your Deck, I think. So, big birthday for Commander players.
Yeah, so this episode is dedicated as a birthday gift to Sheldon. We decided to record today because of that, not just because that was the plan.
Yeah, Sheldon, you better appreciate this, and I hope everyone is celebrating Sheldon's birthday by burning your copies of Golos. Anyway, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about Salt in Commander, or maybe in Magic as a whole.
Well, yeah, Spencer, I'd say at this point we're pretty well-seasoned podcasters.
Yeah.
So we should talk about Salt, because...
Well, yeah, the thing is, Eli, is as you play more and more Magic, you get more and more invested into Magic, and that means that you probably care more, and then when you care more, you can tend to get salty when things don't go your way. So I think we're going to talk about a lot of things involving what can cause salt, maybe ways to avoid it, and just how to deal with other people being salty, stuff like that.
Yeah, we may rehash some points from the When Politics Goes Wrong episode, which was way back now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted to address this notion that Commander's always thought of as this the happy-go-lucky, wacky format where you make friends and you make funny stories and everything's always great and it looks like game nights all the time, right? But no, actually, in my experience, Commander is it leads to some of the most toxic experiences I've ever seen in like all of human interaction in my life. Yeah, it gets pretty nasty sometimes.
Yeah, so we're gonna be going into maybe checking out why the game or what about the game breeds that kind of hostility, or maybe even it's the case that it's not even the game; it's just that humans breed hostility. We'll go into that later and maybe figure that out.
Yeah, it's a social game, and social problems arise from social circumstances.
Yeah, so I guess to start, we probably should define salt, or what is being salty. If you go back historically, we can trace it back to maybe somewhere around the 1920s or before. There were the origins of the term salty. There were like sailors that would come in from being on the ocean for a long time and, salt water. They were sailors that were, frustrated or easily, irritated or discomposed or angry.
Yeah, you'd be pissed off from being on a boat for months.
Surrounded by salt, so they would call you salty or, that's a salty sailor. These days... Salt just means, pretty much like we said, getting angry.
It's mostly been adopted by the gaming communities.
Yeah.
Like, tournament gaming, stuff like that.
Yep, video games, card games, all those sorts of things. Board games probably too. Hobby games. If you're salty, if you're upset, irritated, or, just salty. I think one of the big fighting games, I think, was one of the really big... places where salt was like a big term they used. I remember a long time ago I used to play some fighting games at not like a high level, but trying to play competitively kind of stuff. And yeah, salt was they even had if you want to play a match with somebody and you want to do a rematch, they call that like a salty run back or whatever because you were mad and you wanted to prove that you were better than that or whatever. So just some history about that term.
So pretty common in the Smash community.
Smash and other fighting games like Street Fighter. I used to play a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom. So, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we broke salt down into 3 different sections of what you could be salty about within a game of Commander. And the 3 sections we broke this into would be salty at yourself, salty at others, and salty at nothing in particular. So we're going to go through and break down some stuff within each of those categories.
Yeah, and Eli, why don't you start to talk a little bit about getting salty at, oneself.
So one of the first things that I put down, because I can relate with it a lot, and actually we broke down the percentages which we felt like we encountered this type of salt personally for each of these sections. And so for me, I feel like when I'm getting salty, about half of the time it's at myself for, say, making a mistake. You know, with all the information you have to keep track of in Commander and everything going on, it's so easy to make mistakes. Just in Magic in general, like, nobody's perfect. You're gonna make mistakes. Things go wrong. Just it's easy to beat yourself up about it.
Certainly. And, one thing that I think we did in preparation for this is Eli, you mentioned those three kinds of ways of getting salty about a game. And we kind of did a very rough estimate of how much, like, what percentage of the time we thought ourselves were getting salty at that specific kind of thing. So, for example, getting salty at oneself, I tend to not get very salty at myself a lot. So I gave myself like 5% of the time I get salty.
Yeah, as opposed to my 50% of the time. Because, well, if you wouldn't know this if you haven't played with Spencer Cook. He does not make very many mistakes. He's like the freaking Terminator or something.
And I just tend to not be mad at myself when I make mistakes. I tend to be more mad, just salty in general.
Yeah, that's healthy though. I mean, because everybody makes mistakes. It's especially like rough when you make a mistake and people can notice it, because there's definitely times where I'll make a mistake in a game, but it's like I missequence things, or I play the wrong thing, or forget to play something, and like it's my opponents don't know what I could have done instead of that. Like, they don't know that I did the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just me getting mad at myself.
Well, there's this age old thing in more constructed formats of Magic. Like I remember it happening a lot in like limited or in like standard or something. But you would like make a clear mistake, and then you would be too afraid. Like let's say you like should have played something in your pre-combat main phase, and then you get like blown out by a trick in combat. Sometimes people will be too embarrassed to just play it in their second main phase because they'll be like, "Oh, my opponent will see that I just totally messed that up."
Definitely.
But the real heads up play is to just accept have some humility or whatever, and then just accept it's better to play it than not to play it. Like, you should just not be worried about looking embarrassed and stuff. But I mean, you can't help it all the time, right?
Yeah, or if you're worried about people embarrassing you or saying something about it, just if you realize it, just get on top of it. Just kind of, it's like making fun of yourself so that other people don't do it. It's
you said, oh, I should have done this beforehand or something, instead of just playing it and hoping no one notices, maybe.
Yeah, I think the humility really helps there.
Yeah.
And aside from making mistakes, do you have anything else you want to mention on?
No, you're good. You're good. Move on.
I just wanted to mention one other thing you might get mad at yourself for is being on a losing streak in Commander. And we mentioned, I think on our last episode or one of the ones before that, this idea of you really, in a game of Commander, your win percentage is 25%.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could have a whole stretch of games where you just don't win a game for like 10 plus games, depending on how many you play.
And that's expected.
That's definitely expected. You could go a month or 2 months maybe, depending on how often you play.
Yeah.
Without winning a game. And you shouldn't take that personally.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I don't know. Players, I think a lot of players have started adapting an idea of not playing to win, or like playing like for small wins, like, oh, I got to do my thing. And I think that definitely helps people stay not salty for like losing games. I guess you can still get salty if like what you're trying to do doesn't end up working, but besides that, it could be a good way to go about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, retrain your brain. You just gotta you can't go in with the expectation that you're gonna win. You should absolutely still try and win. I think
certainly.
I think the game only functions and plays out the right way if everyone is trying on some level to win. If you're just going in and that's never your that's never your goal, then you might run into some like griefer kind of things. But
yeah. And speaking of griefer kind of things, our next topic is getting salty at other players. And I would say, Eli, speaking for myself, I think I put that as the most common form of salt for me. I think I said like 65% of the time or so I get salty at other players. How about you?
I put about 20, but that might not be accurate. I mean, I used to be really bad about that. It used to probably be like 50% in my past, but I've tried to work on that and move past it because, you have no control over what other people do, and like chastising people for doing what you think is the wrong thing. You don't get anything out of that. It's just gonna hurt them, and it's gonna not make you feel any better.
Yeah. So one thing, like ways that you can find yourself getting salty at other players. One of the most common ones is if someone is threat assessing, you and your permanents higher than you think they should be. So you disagreeing with their threat assessment, and the result of that is it feels like they're kind of incorrectly targeting you. That can be a pretty big thing that induces salt in someone, especially if they have if they really believe from the bottom of their heart that the person's doing something wrong. It can feel bad, right?
Yeah, it's hard to remember that rarely is it the case that there's like an objectively right and wrong play in Commander. Like, there might be things somebody like obviously they have like a combo piece in play and they just like tutor, or like they have the other piece in their hand and they're going to win the next turn if you don't do something, and then somebody else destroys your thing. Like that might be a little bit tilting, and that's going to happen, but that's rarely the case.
Yeah, and there's so much going on at any given Commander table with whether it's the decks involved, the players' hands, the unknown information, all that stuff, that it's really hard for you to just like decide. It's really hard to make a definitive statement about whether a play is good or bad, right? So it's just try to remember that maybe even they did make a mistake, but that's just kind of how it happens sometimes. That's how the cookies crumble.
And everyone is so biased. Like, obviously, if somebody asks you, like, what should I do in this situation, you're always going to favor the thing that negatively interacts with somebody else and, leaves you fine. Like, you're going to prefer the things that positively affect you in the game.
And you should try to assume, I think it's good to assume that your opponents are not just trying to fuck with you. I think it's probably better to assume that they're trying to act in good faith, like in such a way that like they're trying to win the game and they're trying not to lose the game. I think if you come in with that mindset, it probably helps you not get as salty.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier how if somebody has no investment in winning the game, it can be a little bit frustrating because you don't. If they've straight up told you that, or like if they've straight up mentioned that they just want to like kill players or something like that can be frustrating because you can't do anything about that. So that could be something that you could choose not to play with that person if it bothers you that much.
Yeah,
that's all you can really do about that.
Yeah, I don't know. And ultimately in Commander, like your goal isn't. Ultimately, the end goal of Commander is to be the last person in the game, right? To win, I suppose. And, the means of doing that are going to involve hurting your opponents. That's just going to happen, right? Like, you have to kill them at some point. So, if someone kills you, I get it. Like, maybe you don't think it was the right play, but, they're working towards the goal of you being dead eventually.
Yeah, usually this salt comes from people interacting with you too much, but you even might notice in like total like battle crews or just like smash creatures each other magic, the same thing would still happen. People would still get salty because you're gonna have the choice between like killing one player or another player, and you're gonna kill somebody and they're gonna have the same issue. They're gonna be like, well, why did you attack me?
Why me? Why not the other guy? And it's like, well, I just gotta choose someone, right?
It's gotta be somebody.
Yeah. Another reason that you could be getting salty at another person in the game is if someone's maybe playing some sort of strategy that you don't like. So, for example, you really hate stacks effects, and someone plays, a light or even moderate or heavy stacks deck or card, and that can be a way for you to get salty
I think
at another person.
I think Jimmy really hates stacks.
He's talked about that from what I understand.
A couple episodes of the Command Zone where they bring up like some example of just like the worst thing ever, and Jimmy's like, oh my god, the stacks deck and this and that, Winter Orb.
Yeah, so if someone, that's something that you could definitely get, angry at, if you, or not even angry, but salty, I suppose. Maybe someone plays a Voltron deck or something, right? And you're like, I can't even do anything about this. Then you like get sad because you're like, okay, whatever, I die. Or maybe even some people really hate combos, so if someone plays a combo deck, they could get really salty.
Some people have some very specific expectations out of what they want in a game of Commander.
Mm-hmm.
And when those expectations aren't met, they get pretty upset. But rarely do these people, like, we talk about the Rule Zero thing. It's rare that they mention it beforehand. They'll get mad in the moment. But it's like, how are you supposed to know that, especially if it's a stranger? I've had people get upset at me for attacking them too much and trying to, like, knock them out first. And it's like, well, if I didn't know you before then, I can't know that you didn't want this to happen, and I'm just trying to play the game.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And on a similar level, not just strategies, but even just individual cards. Like, maybe you play... I don't know, if you look at, like, the EDH Rec, they just did their Salt score for this year. And, you can just take a look at that list and some of the higher cards on there. I could imagine... Like, for example, I've got a friend who really hates Smothering Tithe, and he might... he gets kind of... I don't know if he gets super salty. He's a pretty chill guy, but, like, when he sees a Smothering Tithe, he's like, I hate that card, kill it now, kind of thing. So, some people just don't like certain cards.
Yeah, I looked through the Salt score cards, and I noticed a common theme between a lot of them, that they were either cards that reduce the amount of game actions players can take, or they greatly increase the amount of actions one player could take. So, for example, it'd either be like stacks cards like Stasis, Winter Orb, Static Orb, stuff like that, or it would be things like Omniscience, like just things that create like a large resource imbalance. So I take this to mean, and like I can relate with, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with this, is you don't like being in games where you feel like you're not playing as much Magic as you should be.
Sure, like proportionally to your opponents, right?
Yeah, so and with the stacks cards, I think that feeling is somewhat a little bit irrational, because on an average case scenario, you're getting the same amount of actions as your opponents, but a lot of those stacks pieces, would be used asymmetrically.
Yeah.
So I can understand that, but
yeah.
Personally, I'm on the other camp, on the other side of that, where I get much more upset when somebody's using the kind of cards or strategies where they take insanely long turns, and like I have decks that do that same thing. So, some of them are actually, or at least one of them is kind of like a sick parody of that. Like, Simic decks that just like take 10-minute turns and don't really do anything. That's the kind of thing that might upset me, because then you're taking like a reasonable length turn, and somebody else is kind of monopolizing the time of the game.
Yeah. Another thing about that I want to say is, I've had cards like even like the opposite of a pet card. Like, even if it's like totally irrational, like you can just be like, oh, I hate that card. So, for example, Humble Defector was a card that I would always, back in the a year ago or something, I would always kill it on sight, because it was always, I wasn't about that Humble Defector life. Pretty is the long and short of that story. So that was a card that made me salty. I was like, I gotta kill it now.
I didn't give Spencer the Humble Defector very often.
Well, I wasn't willing to do the Humble Defector deal, was the thing, and I thought it was cringe. Now I've adopted the Humble Defector life, though. Okay, but the third category we have here is being salty at nobody in particular. And this kind of means more along the lines of stuff that is luck-based, maybe getting mana flooded or mana screwed, maybe getting salty at just like random occurrences in the game, like just like the course of the game in general, not like ascribing that to any player in particular, just like, oh, things in Commander games happen and it's not going my way, but no one really did anything to me, it's just kind of how it's going.
Yeah, you're mad, but you don't have anyone to blame it on.
So you're just blaming it on the entropy of the universe.
Before we go into this too deeply, I wanted to mention one thing about the Salt scores I found kind of funny. There are, I think it would be 5 cards on there that are not like the other ones, Spencer. They're very unique, and they don't seem like the effects you would get really salty at. Do you want to guess what those cards are? They have a common theme.
Counterspells?
They are the Secret Lair Walking Dead cards.
Oh, of course, those 5.
They got put some of them are pretty reasonably high on the EDH Rec Salt score. So
and those aren't salty for gameplay reasons.
Yeah, I just thought that was ludicrous.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But yeah, I'm talking about getting like it's everyone knows that Magic players want to blame something and anything when stuff goes wrong, and sometimes you don't have players to blame, so you just blame whatever, and that you can get salty at no one in particular. Everybody does it a lot sometimes. Like, it's not just a thing that like you have to be like weak-minded or something to do. Everyone will get salty at just RNG, especially.
This isn't just a Magic player thing, but everyone knows the kind of gamer. Like, you maybe had a friend like this or known somebody like this, that when they win, it's all skill, 100%. When they lose, I just had bad luck.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be hard not to get salty when, like, for example, you lose 4 mana crypt flips in a row, and you're like, okay, I'm dead because of that. It can be hard not to get salty at that, right? Because, like, okay, I got insanely unlucky here. But, it comes. The salt flows within all of us.
Yeah, some people might think, it's better to be born lucky than good, but really, luck isn't, I don't know. It's just, everyone has the same...
Oh yeah, and then when someone else gets lucky, you be salty at that. You're like, oh my god, they got so lucky here. But you're not mad at them, you're mad at the luck. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, when I'm playing, when the other guy wins 4 mana crypt flips, you're like, wow, I really wish, he was at low life and got punished for playing that card that has a downside, but not this game, I guess.
Yeah, it's important to remember for every game you've lost because of RNG or bad luck, you've probably won just as many games because somebody else was having bad luck.
Yeah.
Not drawing the right things, just things weren't going right.
You can also get salty sometimes about, individual cards, like in your deck. Like, for example, if you get, like, if there was a card that you put in your deck and then it's, like, not really performing as well as you wanted it to, you'd be like, oh, man, that kind of sucks. I'm going to take you out now, kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways. What I'm getting at here is there's a lot of ways that you can get salty, and it's not just like, okay, someone targeted my thing, I'm salty. Like, salt comes with everything, I feel.
There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of things that can happen in a game, and
yeah,
I think it's probably just important to try and not project that onto other people so much if you can help it. Like,
yeah,
it's not the healthiest to put it on yourself too. Like, you should avoid that, but just need to, like, take a moment, because it happens to everybody. I haven't known anybody I've played, like, even like the most chill, like, coolest Commander players I ever played with.
The Commander players that hang with the hottest dudes.
They get salty too. I've seen, probably everybody I've ever played with get a little bit salty.
Yeah, certainly. All right, well, do you want to move on here, Eli, and talk about the ways that people get salty outside of the game, or things from outside of the game that cause people to accumulate their salt?
Yeah, there are a lot of outside factors that would be unseen. You gotta
think. I mean, you gotta, like, speculate a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you really should cut people some slack, I think, right? Because sometimes someone could just be getting salty because of a bad day or something like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. You should
consider it, at least.
Especially if you know somebody and, like, they're just having they just seem different or something's off. Like, you should think there's probably a reason why they're behaving this way.
Yeah.
Give people a little bit of charity.
Yeah.
The first thing we put down was just, like, being in a bad mood could contribute to saltiness on a day.
For sure. I mean, even if, like, you have a great life going on, sometimes you're just in a bad mood, Even if you're, like, doing well in a Commander game, your bad mood can just bring you down and make you salty at the littlest things.
Yeah, and I wanted to put a life pro tip on here. This is kind of like a psychology or, like, philosophy sort of thing. If you're in a bad mood, and say you like playing Magic and you get, like, that's your hobby, you enjoy playing Magic, but you're depressed or you're just having, like, you're in a really shitty mood, you shouldn't then go and, like, try and play Magic with people, especially, like, strangers at the LGS or something, with the expectation that that's going to fix your bad mood. Because that's really, that's not how that works. You can't do things because you think they're going to, like, cause happiness. That's not how happiness works. Really, you need to do things for the value of just doing them.
And then I would say that if you go in with the intention of playing Magic to fix your mood, and then you get salty, like, it's going to be even worse. You're like, oh man, I'm even more mad now, and you're going to get mad quicker.
Yeah, especially if these strangers or even your friends, if they don't know that you have this expectation that this is to like make you feel better, it's really not fair on them because they're not obligated to make you better. That's not a fair thing to put on somebody,
especially without them knowing.
Yeah, because they're there for the same reasons. They want to have a good time, but they don't maybe necessarily need it. You shouldn't ever need that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
And then similarly, to involved in mood, like a lot of Magic players or just people in general have various mental health problems. Mental health is a important topic, and that can definitely contribute to getting salty or something in the course of a game of Magic.
Yeah, definitely. I was trying to do some research for this, and I'm kind of I'm a psych student right now, so stuff interests me, and I was trying to look up like percentages on stuff, and I wasn't finding like all the best information, but I didn't put too much effort into this. But in the United States, about 8% population has some kind of anxiety disorder.
Yeah, and that can contribute a lot to being unsure about yourself, unsure about your actions, stuff like that can make you maybe even like make salt fester, because I know I've had some anxiety problems in my life, and maybe you're salty but you don't want to like talk about it or whatever, or speak up, so your salt just kind of like pools on itself and you just end up having a bad time. Yeah, but other than stuff like anxiety, a lot of people in the world, I suppose, suffer from stuff like depression, autism, lots of other mental disorders that can make them have a harder time empathizing with other people, or maybe understanding social cues and stuff like that. So try to be understanding of other people if they get salty. Maybe they're suffering from something like that.
Yeah, and like you said about depression, like I've been there. I've been that person that felt like I had a shitty life and I was in a bad mood all the time. And I like playing Magic, so I would go to the game store or try and like play Commander and be like, this is what's going to cheer me up because this is what I like, this is what I'm good at. And a lot of the times, if something goes wrong, that's when it really leaves a sour taste in your mouth, because you had your expectation not met.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes you bitter at other people because you feel like they might be the reason why your expectation wasn't met. And that's not true, and that's not their responsibility.
Yeah, not really fair for them. In addition to stuff like mood affecting someone's salt, also you can have your outside of the game perceptions of other people, like players in the game. Like maybe I just don't like somebody, that could make me get salty at them a lot quicker, right? Like if I have outside of the game problems with someone for whatever reason I have, that's going to affect if I get salty at them or not, probably, right?
Yeah. Another pro tip: try and avoid playing with people you don't like, because you will get mad at them. If you don't like somebody, you're not going to, like we've talked about, like extending charity to people and like trying to be gracious with like how you interpret their actions and stuff. You're not going to do that so easily for people you just don't like.
Yeah, and even outside of that, like maybe you're taking in grudges from previous games into new games, like that can affect your salt levels. Like if someone just messed you up real bad in the last game, the next game they do something to you, you're like, man, again? It can contribute to your salt for sure.
Yeah, or if I'm playing a game with somebody that I just don't like, and I have that situation where like I can kill somebody, I'm probably gonna put aside like in-game reasons and like do it to them specifically, because if I'm like, who do I want to play more Magic with tonight? My friends or this one person who played with us that I just really don't care for? And then that's going to influence your decision-making. That's not really fair to them.
Yeah, but it happens if you're salty, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Just go right at them.
Yeah, and outside of just like preconceived notions of other players, stuff like your home life. So like if you're having issues in your life, like a job or maybe relationship things, that can really contribute to added stressors, maybe getting more salty more easily, stuff like that.
Yeah, and again, this is something a few years ago, I was working in just like a dead-end job that I hated, and I had a terrible relationship, and so my going to Alexandria on Thursdays for their Commander night, that was like kind of an escape, and I got to see some people that I really liked and related with, and so I was trying to play Commander as like a way to escape life, and then you get that expectation, like I was talking about, that this is going to be a good time, and I'm going to feel good about myself, and then when things go wrong, it feels even worse.
Yeah, and you get really, really salty.
So don't try and fix don't try to temporarily remedy your life problems.
Yeah, your magic game isn't going to solve your home life problems, so don't come into that with that expectation. Try to maybe separate that from your mood or whatever.
It's such a temporary fix. Like, you can't...
Yeah.
There's no value to be gained from playing more Magic in that situation. Trust me. Because I played a lot of Magic around then, and it did not help.
Yeah, maybe focus on the other parts of your life that are making you unhappy. Because, yeah, like you were saying, Eli, Magic really... I feel like it's hard to have fun playing Magic when you're unhappy in general. At least from my experience, it's well, at least you're gonna... I don't know. I'm just gonna move on from now and say that also something for me personally, other people that I know... your own insecurities can definitely be a thing that makes you salty. Everybody has insecurities, especially if Magic is like a really big part of your life. You might be pretty self-conscious about stuff like your win rate, your intelligence in the sense of Magic cards and stuff like that. So if you like are derived, is that not derived? If someone derides you for like being stupid or whatever in the context of Magic, that can really cut to the core of your own insecurities and make you really salty really fast.
Yeah, this is something that's very, very personal to me too, in that around that time in my life when I would go and play Commander in Alexandria, or it was back when I was living in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and we would go to the game store every once in a while. I would take things very seriously there because I felt like my win condition and how well I did in Magic reflected some kind of part of my worth, because I didn't feel like I had much worth as a person, and I thought maybe if I'm going to be good at anything, this is what I'm kind of good at. I was good at playing Commander and like playing Boros Commander, so I thought that meant something, and I felt like I had something to prove to a lot of people there, and so I took things very seriously and did very well for a while, but when things went wrong, they really went wrong for me on a personal level. And I took things a lot harder than most people would have.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, something, your something you had written down here, Eli, is your win rate in EDH is a terrible metric for your worth. You shouldn't, try to derive happiness from your win rate, or like derive self-worth from your win rate. Because that can lead to really bad... When your win rate goes wrong, you're going to feel like shit.
I mean, you can have great decks and you can have a lot of skill, but there's so much you can't control about that it's really not fair to say, oh, I have I only win a quarter of my game, so I'm bad at Magic. Like, no, that's actually really good.
Yeah, and similarly to that, like... one thing that can be very frustrating for Magic players, myself included, is if somebody is questioning your decisions. And I'm guilty of questioning people's decisions, right? Everyone, it's something that people do, right? Like, oh, maybe you should have done that. It's like, yeah, maybe I should have. Maybe you're also just fucking stupid. So it can be a thing that gets Salt brought up a lot, right?
Well, and an interesting thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people that are really into games like Magic or other games, they might play with somebody newer or like somebody who just isn't very good at games and kind of view it as like, oh, that person's just like dumb. Like, why don't you see this? Like, how do you do that? Like, you're just wrong. And like, why are you so dumb? But the people who are like, quote, dumb in these games situations, a lot of the time are really average to smart people outside of the gaming context, and they just don't play a lot of games.
They're just not super invested in the game, yeah.
How good you are at Magic or at gaming in general is not a metric of like your intelligence.
It could be, but not necessarily, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of forms of intelligence, and there's a lot of just knowledge that people... Like, a lot of skill in Magic is just like knowledge of how things interact and like how the rules work or like what cards are good. You could have like the perfect like what's the program, Spencer, that's for like playing chess or something that's like
sure,
Alpha Zero
some
or something
Alpha
like
Zero
that.
or Stockfish or some program, some
you
AI.
can have like some Alpha Zero brain as far as like playing the game, but if you don't like understand what cards are good or like what if you don't understand the broader context of Commander, a lot of those decisions you might not have the right knowledge to make those decisions correctly,
or maybe the right wisdom is a better word to use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to talk about in terms of these outside of the game, kind of contributors to Salt? Because I think that's about all I had.
I just want to, I've been bringing up a lot of personal experience, and I really just want to say, because I'm sure there's, sadly, that there, I know there's other people who are like me or like who, I think I've changed since then, but it's not a good place to be in. And if you know somebody who acts like that, just give them a little bit of patience. Like, it doesn't excuse their actions, but try and like have a talk with them and tell them that they should really probably take a break and try and find something else outside of Magic, or that they need to look for different help.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Well, I think that's a good way to transition into talking about times we were really upset and salty. Because, I know, Eli, you have a lot of personal stories. You've been talking about a lot of stories, but I know you have a lot of times where you've gotten salty. So do you want to start by sharing a couple of those?
Yeah, man, so I've got a lot of stories. I said before that I don't feel like I get too salty at other people, at least lately. But oh boy, did I used to, because I've played with some real cringe people that do some real stupid-ass shit sometimes. And it's just, maybe it's not always so bad. I've probably gotten more mad than I should have for some of these things. But some things, the first one I wanted to mention is, I was playing in Alexandria at one point, and I play a turn 1 land tax. I kept a 1 land tax hand. Maybe shouldn't have done that, but you can do it.
That's fine.
And the other two guys I'm playing with, and this is what we call a league game too. So we didn't really like have strict prizes, but if you won games, you got to put like an extra drawing in a bucket,
right?
for a prize at the end of the month. So there was kind of an incentive to win. And these two guys, they're friends. They say, let's both just not play our land drops so that he doesn't get a land tax trigger. So there was an extra probably 10 minutes added to that game of not doing anything because they decided that it would be funny to own me, pretty much. And I got pretty mad because, that was my one day of the week that I could really get out and play Magic with people, so...
Yeah, I get you there.
I was a little bit upset. It was a little bit tilting. And then when they things actually start rolling in the game, they kind of like 2v1 me. So, that's a different thing, but the land text thing really sticks with me.
Mm-hmm.
Should I give through some more, Spencer, or do you want to try and give an example?
So I don't have a lot of like exact examples, but one like sentiment that I can think of that happens quite often that I get salty at is when I feel like people, especially newer players or inexperienced players, have some poor threat assessment, quote unquote poor, right? Like, it's not black and white, but something that's just very obviously wrong and it negatively impacts me. It can be a very easy way to get salty and just be like, okay, sure, I guess, you can fuck me up when the other guy's winning the game and I'm just playing my thing. Okay, fine. Stuff like that. So that's a time that's something I get salty at. But I try not to, try not to be rude to other people and stuff. I just let it happen. But you can't help getting salty. It's what you do with your salt.
Yeah, it really sucks to be on the end of that. But you just got to remind yourself, like, especially with the new player thing, and especially if they don't know you or they're not playing with any of their friends, that thing just as likely would have happened to somebody else as it would have happened to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that does not feel good.
Yeah.
I've got another one. Now we've debated about this one, Spencer, and I've come to realize it's not objectively like the wrong thing. It just I was I got mad. I got salty. You know, salt's not always...
It flows, Eli.
It's not always correct. You know, it's not always rational. But I was playing my Thada Adele mono blue deck. And you know what? In hindsight, I probably deserved this for playing mono blue. But I think my Thada Adele deck... I don't know. I was about to say I consider it like kind of casual, but I could see how people might disagree with that because the theme of it kind of lends itself to being a little bit strong. It's pretty much just steal all the Soul Rings deck.
Make a lot of mana.
And make a lot of mana, but not with like fast mana. It has one Soul Ring in it, but aside from that, it has like next to no like mana rocks. It's got like a couple that are kind of cutesy ones, but nothing like really competitive, like no mana crypt or anything. It steals those cards from people with Thada Adele. So I go and attack my friend, and I think Thada must have had like Lightning Greaves on her or something, because he has 3 mana, and he goes to Beast Within, but for some reason couldn't do it to Thada Adele. And Beast Within's his own land to make a 3/3 and block. And I was a little bit mad about that, but well.
That's how it be.
That's how it shakes out sometimes.
It kind of lends itself to like those self-destructive plays are more self-inducing because it's like you're just fucking kamikazeing me right now.
For me, definitely, because like I like the idea of everyone playing for their own like benefit and for like their own end game and winning the game. And if somebody is not invested in that, they can just do whatever they want because like they're not afraid of repercussion. They don't care if they lose. They don't care if they get knocked out first.
Yeah, no, I probably might have made someone else salty because I remember one time recently, Eli, we were playing a game and I was really pretty much out of the game. I was having a rough time of it, taking a lot of damage, very low in life, and someone targeted me with the Red Gear Hulk. And I was just like, yeah, sure, I'll take the damage, and then we'll see what you flip. And I was at like 6 life or something, and they like 10 damage and killed me. I'm like, oh. That's how it be sometimes, But I probably might have made that person salty by just, not being so as super invested in winning. Well, because I guess I would argue that I was kind of gonna lose no matter what anyway. So I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna be your punching bag and give you your cards for free.
No, Spencer, that's just an alpha move.
Yeah. All right. So, but my point there is, don't try to fuck with the guy who's got nothing to lose. You don't know what he'll do. So sometimes that's the Gear Hulk strat of like coming after the guy with like low life. He might just not give you cards, if he's like considers himself out of the game.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm out of the game anyway, fuck it. But I don't know. Do you want to tell another story about that then, Eli?
Yeah, and I apologize if I've told these stories on the show before. Probably have. I might have.
I don't think you have.
But one of my first times playing at Elemental Games in Alexandria, there used to be this guy who would play. He had like a very expensive collection, and he would bring like CEDH to like near CEDH decks to their Commander night, and they used to have a different prize structure. And so he would kind of just like mop up there, and like people kind of shifted the meta to play like way too much spot removal because of that, because they had to like pretty much 2 or 3v1 him to like keep him from winning on like turn 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And one of the first times I went, I played with him, and he did like the CEDH win and won like turn 4 or 5 because nobody really did anything. And then we played another game after that one, and he switched decks to a slightly less powerful deck, but it was still like a pretty high power like Chain Veil to Fairy Tech. And he just had kind of like a kind of slowish start, but not like crazy slow. He got interacted with more in that game, so I think that's kind of what held him back. But eventually I was playing my mono white Thalia deck, and probably had a lot of decent interaction that game, and it's kind of hanging in it. And eventually one of the guys had to leave early, so it was down to me, the Teferi player, and a group hug player. And they both had Lighthouse Chronologists fully leveled up. And so they were just taking a turn and then taking a turn. So I pretty much was locked out of taking a turn for like 5 turns until one of them got destroyed. And so eventually it gets back to my turn, and I had I think this was at a point where I had Vidalcan Orrery in my deck. And I had just short of the amount of lands for Emeria the Sky Ruin, and I had an Iona in my graveyard because it wasn't banned yet. And so on the end step before it goes back to my turn, I flash in a Knight of the White Orchid, and then I ghost quarter one of my other lands to get an extra plane, so I have enough planes for Emeria, and then go to my upkeep and get Iona into play. And he didn't have a stifle or anything for it. So Iona choosing blue. And I was like, we freaking got him. Like, yes. Mm-hmm. Game over, right? Like, you don't really have many answers to that. Like, maybe he could have drawn a Karn or something. But I was like, I did it. Like, I got him, and I felt so good. And then it goes in this group hug player. He was playing a Bant deck, and he's like, I don't like that. I'm going to use Dawnbreak Reclaimer, and he chooses the Teferi player to get a clone out of his deck. And so he can choose Iona and name white.
Based.
So, yeah, that felt great. That was awesome. Mono white versus like near CDH mono blue deck, and the group hug player's like, I'm going to put my thumb on the scale this way. And it's a little tilting. So I had to trade off the Ionas to get in the game, and it didn't matter, though, at that point. So a little bit salt-inducing.
Yeah, everyone gets salty at some things.
Yeah.
Again, talking about myself again, I get one thing I get salty at. I don't have exact stories, but when it feels like I'm getting targeted, like I get it. Like when you get your shit removed, it sucks. But specifically when I get my shit killed, and then it feels like the other players are being left to their own devices, and then they do crazy things. It's like, okay, well, that's a bit salt-inducing. It's like I could have been one of you guys, but I had the proverbial foot, standing on my back, so I couldn't stand up.
Yeah, and then they just don't even
interact with the other guys at all.
Proceed to interact with the other guy. Yeah, is really...
It happens sometimes. But that's about all I got, Eli. I know you might have a couple more you want to share, so...
I'll share one more anecdote. So this was a real moment of clarity. I have this really awesome friend. He's actually one of the people up there with Spencer Cook that I consider one of the best Commander players I've ever played with. His name is Charlie, and he would play at the Elemental Games game store. He's a really smart guy and played some really good decks. And I was in the winner's pod of the night with Charlie and my then ex-girlfriend, and I was playing my Tajik deck, and we were just it's a 3-player game, so the dynamics are already kind of weird, but
yeah,
I was doing okay. Everyone was kind of doing their thing, but Charlie was playing the Bant Enchantress Commander.
Kesha or one of the other ones?
The 3-mana one that is kind of an Enchantress.
It gets bigger when the amount of
I forget its name, the Merfolk.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a Dream Halls in play, and that's a really strong card. And he has a lot of card advantage and a lot of mana, and he at one point plays a Luminarch Ascension. And I'm like, okay, that's really bad because he's got a lot of mana, but it's really unlikely that activates in this game because it's only a 3-player game, and I can damage him every turn if I have to. So it's probably not going to happen. And my ex-girlfriend was playing an Atraxa deck.
Yeah.
And it's a 3-player game, so politics don't really work that well, but she's trying to do politics a lot, and she's like, Charlie, if you do this or whatever, I'll proliferate your Luminarch Ascension. I was just like, no, you're because I was like, there's no way he loses this game if that goes off, because he had so much mana and so much card advantage. With the Dream Halls, he didn't have to spend his mana on his spells really, so he could put that all into making angels. And I was like, no, you're throwing. And I got so mad I just scooped out of the game after that happened, after it went active, because I could not see any scenario where he was not winning that game. And so I leave early to kind of cool off because I was really mad. And then a few minutes go by and he walks out and he comes up to me and Charlie's like, she won, by the way. And he kind of said, because he knew how much of an asshole I was being.
Yeah.
And he insists that he didn't let her win. He didn't throw the game. But some part of me still wonders if he let her win the game just to prove a point to me about what a dickbag I was being.
Based.
And yeah, Charlie is based. Just a good person.
Well, speaking of all this salt that's being thrown around, maybe we should talk about ways you can weaponize your salt. And I don't mean that in a way of using your salt to start, slinging grenades at people.
Like blowing it in somebody's eyes.
Yeah, no, but if you can use your salt to make a positive change in your play group, game store, the world as a whole, whatever makes you happy. So, if you get mad about something that happens in the game, you can use that as an excuse to brew a new deck or something, make something out of your salt. If, for example, maybe you're getting owned by some stacks effects, make a deck that preys on stacks or something. I don't know. Have fun with it.
I would recommend, though, maybe not, if you're salty because you're losing a bunch of games or you just feel like you're getting targeted too much, I'd say the solution isn't try and build a near CEDH or a CEDH deck to stomp on your play group. So that doesn't sound very healthy.
No, but be creative with it though. If you get salty,
I'd say try something outside of if everyone's targeting you all the time, there's probably a reason for that. Spencer, we've talked about sometimes we play some pretty strong stuff, and I play some pretty strong stuff sometimes. And so if I'm getting targeted too much, I can't say that's not for
good reason.
Yeah, that's not for a good reason. It's probably because I'm playing stuff that's a little too strong. So I try and make some slightly weaker decks that are still fun to play, but not scary,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think that's the solution. You need to try and build a new reputation. You might even like it more.
Mm-hmm. And then, also you can maybe use getting salty as an excuse to do some self-reflection. For example, we talked a lot about stuff like mental health and home life. If you find yourself getting salty a lot, you can use that as an excuse to kind of reevaluate your life, your relationships with other people, stuff like that. Maybe enact some positive change in your life.
This isn't an easy thing to hear, and it's not always necessarily true, but the saying, if everyone you meet is an asshole, you're probably the asshole.
Yeah.
That does hold true usually.
Yeah.
So you should be capable of some self-reflection.
Yeah, and if you're finding yourself getting very salty and you have all this pent-up energy, you can EDHTake yourself to the gym and kind of work that anger out physically. It's good for you.
Yeah, it really just exercising more really does a lot to make you feel better, and especially if you are angry, us males.
Yeah.
Get real mad sometimes. You just want to lift things up and put them down. It feels good.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend that. I've started going to the gym now at the college, and
yep, I've also started going to the gym recently. It's
feels
good.
Great.
Feels good.
But yeah, if you're constantly having negative experiences with Magic, please just consider taking a break, or at least reevaluating how often you play or who you play with. A lot of that can matter a lot.
There's a couple games that I've played in my life, and I think Magic is definitely one of them, where you don't quit Magic, you just take a break from Magic. And that's my experience with games like Magic, games like League of Legends, some of these other, at least for my life. And yeah, so don't feel like if you stop playing Magic, if that's it, break, if you just don't feel like playing Magic, take a break. Maybe it's a year-long break. I feel like most people will probably end up coming back at some point. So maybe that's a reason not to sell out your whole collection,
Yeah, don't try to avoid selling your whole Magic collection.
At least don't impulse sell your shit.
Yeah.
And then, last thing I want to talk about for, weaponizing your salt is, in a way, EDHTakes is kind of a result of weaponizing our salt towards other, Magic podcasts and content creators, because the whole point of the podcast, in some sense, was to give opinions that we thought weren't very, weren't being spread out as much, things that we thought other content creators were wrong about, stuff like that. So that's kind of a result of some salt brewing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we have to say for our main segment.
But we got some spicy things to talk about. It is Sheldon's birthday, so it wouldn't be right to not talk about Sheldon's article. He just posted his rules update to the Commander ban list.
Happy birthday, Sheldon. Sheldon, what do you want for your birthday? Probably not hate messages and death threats.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't... It's kind of unfortunate that Sheldon had to, make a divisive ban just a couple days before his birthday. I'm sure that was not ideal.
And as far as I know, he hasn't received any death threats, but I mean, you never know with stuff the internet's crazy.
A lot of Magic players getting mad.
Yeah, Magic play. This ties in actually because people
get salty.
Are pretty salty about ban list changes.
Yeah, and I've had the displeasure of resorting to arguing on Facebook, and I made the grave mistake of jumping into that arena when I should not be doing that. But Eli, do you want to just talk about maybe, I don't know if do we want to read the descriptions for their bans, or do you want to just talk about them?
Well, so I woke up Monday morning, pretty tired, pretty out of it. I usually grab my phone right away, see what time it is, and go on Twitter, like just kind of wake my brain up. And I start seeing all this stuff, people talking about Golos, Tireless Pilgrim being banned in Commander, and Worldfire being unbanned. And I was like, what?
What?
Because this is never...
You never would have expected.
I never would have guessed that. And I was like, am I being trolled? Is this like a joke? Like,
is this like some epic Commander Twitter like meme that they're doing or something?
Yeah, because we think about Commander pretty often, and I wouldn't have ever guessed that this would be the next ban list change.
I don't think Golos or Worldfire were on anyone's radar, except for mine, because I said unban Worldfire.
Spencer
and I was
literally predicted it. Like, I don't know if we said it on the episode, but there's a point where he mentions an effect like Worldfire on an episode a ways back and puts up like an image of Worldfire and just says unban Worldfire.
Yeah, one of the videos. I can't quite remember which one. But but no, the Golos ban, that came out of left field, I think, for most Commander players, right? I don't think people expected that at all.
You know, a common thing with a lot of the cards that have been banned in the last couple of years is you see a lot of negativity towards those cards. You see people kind of clamoring for the cards to be banned, or saying, these cards they feel terrible to play with, or they're maybe unhealthy for the format. And I know there's people who don't like Golos or didn't like Golos. I never saw that sort of vitriol.
Not at least not to the level of any other, like, I mean, the vitriol towards Golos isn't any higher than the vitriol towards other, similarly powerful commanders, right?
Yeah, just strong,
good commanders.
Made for commanders.
Yeah, or even not the made for commander ones. I mean, like, people were probably as mad as they are about Golos as they were about Oloro back in the day, or Atraxa, or even something like Tatyova. It's not made for commander, but in a similar way,
Yeah, and I know this might be somewhat of an influence on why people didn't like Golos, but Golos was the number one commander on EDH Rec, which, doesn't necessarily prove it was the most popular commander in the world, but it proves that people liked Golos, right?
Sure, it proves that at least people built Golos decks, or at least online.
People liked playing with the card.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't help but think back, you know that meme, Eli, of someone, who the fuck asked, That's how I feel about, Golos' ban, and then, I'm just thinking, who actually asked for Golos to be banned? I don't know.
Spencer, do you think I should read out their statement on the website about
sure, if you'd like
the reasoning for this?
No worry, go for it.
Because I just want to,
be complete.
This is a surprise to us, but clearly, the Rules Committee, they don't just do things for no reason.
Yeah.
So before anyone throws any hate their way, I want to read out their reasoning, and I think Sheldon has a separate article written about this.
Which I think is behind a paywall.
I don't
think
not.
It is. But sometimes they do write articles that are... I'm uncomfortable with the fact that some of Sheldon's articles are behind paywalls for like a month.
For the first week.
However long it is. Yeah. Makes me upset a little bit. Makes me a little salty. Nothing against you, Sheldon, of course. It's just the circumstance. Go ahead, Eli.
Yeah, addressing Worldfire, says, Worldfire was once banned due to the problematic interaction with floating mana and having access to your commander. We want to foster a commander environment where 8 and 9 mana spells are viable and likely to show up in a game. So we evaluate the expensive ones in that context. Unlike Coalition Victory and Biorhythm, which we continue to believe are problematic in that environment, the level of effort needed to make Worldfire effective is sufficient that we suspect it will not cause much of an issue. There are already cheaper ways to do similar things in the format. We believe the social contract and a robust pregame discussion will keep Worldfire out of games in which it doesn't belong. What do you think about that, Spencer?
Fuck it, sure. I want Worldfire unbanned, so I'm just gonna agree with anything Sheldon says because I'm a bad actor.
I agree that I don't think it's very effective. I don't think it's if people are we're worried about it for any kind of power reasons. I don't see that. I don't think it's going to be a strong win condition or a very viable one. It could be. I don't believe it's going to be that great. Better than
something similarly in red, something like Toralf Blasphemous Act or something like that.
Yeah, or I'll mass land destruction with my Boros Charm, whatever. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's Worldfire is probably okay. I like the Worldfire unban.
What do you think about the end statement there, the last sentence of, "We believe the social contract and the pre-game discussions will keep Worldfire out of games in which it doesn't belong"?
I don't think that's the case.
Sounds like a Rule Zero kind of thing.
Yeah, go listen to the Rule Zero episode, but I don't see it that way, because Worldfire is like a win con, right? It's like an end the game card, I would think.
You would hope so.
You'd hope so. So it makes me think people wouldn't even, why would you bring that up?
I've known a few griefers in my day.
I suppose, but I don't know. I don't really care too much to talk about much of the Worldfire stuff. Let's move on to Golos.
Yeah, I don't think it's really offensive. I mean, I'm sure there's people who are going to have a bad game where somebody Worldfires and scoops and says, "See you guys later."
But that's no worse than someone playing an Armageddon and scooping, right?
You just shouldn't play with that person again. IMO. But yeah, so as far as Golos, though, says, "Golos Tireless Pilgrim has been a much discussed card that is both popular to play with and unpopular to play against. There are many problems with the card, but the greatest is that in low to middle tiers where we focus the ban list, Golos is simply a better choice of leader for all but the most commander-centric decks. Its presence crushes the kind of diversity in commander choice which we want to promote. You can drop in Golos and a few 5-color lands into a random deck and get all the ramp and card advantage you would ever want from a commander, with no worries about your mana base. Golos' ability effectively reduces the commander tax to 1, and once you hit 7 mana, with Golos ensuring that you have Wooburg and helping you get there, you don't need to do anything for the rest of the game except cast spells for free, something we always want to be careful about. We've talked to folks in Studio X, which Studio X is Wizards R&D.
Yep.
And they understand the problems created by generically powerful 5-color commanders that don't have Wooburg in their mana cost. We don't expect similar cards to come from them in the future, so a Surgical Strike now makes sense. We understand that many players love Golos, so we don't take this action lightly. In the end, the health of the format is our primary concern, and we find Golos unhealthy. While Kenrith the Return King is a similarly flexible and powerful and popular commander for good stuff 5-color decks, we see it as a clear step down from Golos."
So the first thing that he mentioned there that I want to take issue with was the idea that they said something along the lines of outside of the most commander-centric or focused deck, Golos provides, pretty much better than any other commander, right? And I just don't, maybe I'm crazy here, but I don't think it's a reality that people are just building, their Sultai deck as a Golos deck, with, just Sultai cards in it or something like that. I don't see this happening. I think if someone's building a Golos deck, it's because they want to build a 5-color deck. I don't think people are, being oh, hey, here's my Boros Golos deck because I want card draw and ramp or something.
Yeah, and maybe, because it's not very clear. I think he might be applying that to Commander in general, but it might just be specifically...
I don't think he is applying it to 5-color.
Yeah, it's not very clear.
Well, can you read that part again for me? Sorry, to put you on the spot.
To paraphrase, Golos is simply a better choice of leader for all but the most commander-centric decks. Yeah, right? So, you could interpret it that way.
I don't know.
I definitely do know, I think it was even Benny Smith, if you know him, that wrote the book on Commander. He had a mono-white Golos deck.
Yeah. But, I don't think that's a problem, per se. When... Commander is by all means a format of choice, and players don't always just choose to build the best commander. Otherwise, every commander, every Sultai commander would be whatever you think the best one is, or every Boros commander would be whatever you think the best one is. Players play the bad ones for reasons, so I don't really see it as a problem. I don't think that Golos is getting rid of diversity or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't
see
think,
it doing that.
I don't think it should be a problem that there's a most popular commander in a color combination.
And I also don't agree with the thing that he said that after you play in a Golos deck, all you need to be doing is activating Golos and playing spells for free. That's just like a gross oversimplification of what Golos' ability is. It's random. You can't just you don't just win a game just by activating Golos every turn. You might hit something awesome, you might hit nothing. It's dumb.
Your land or your deck ought to be, around 40% lands.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. What is it, top 3 cards?
Top 3.
Yeah. And like what do you hit like a land, like a creature, like a 5-drop or something, and then like a spell, like a removal spell. Like you don't just win the game by playing a creature and a removal spell every turn. Sorry, like that's not going to win you the game. I don't know. Overall, so actually, do you have anything else you want to say about the discussion there, Eli?
Well, I just wanted to say that the reasons for cards getting put on the ban list, they're usually different reasons. They have some similarities, but usually there's not a consistent reasoning why a card might be put on the ban list. We talked about this in the discussing the ban list episode we did.
Yeah, we did.
How's the ban list work? But to me, it feels like the reasons why Golos is banned feel a lot like why a card might be banned in like a 60-card constructed format, because it was ubiquitous, like it was overly popular and powerful.
Yeah, like Cyclonic Rift is like a really powerful and popular blue board wipe, right?
Yeah, and the thing about the Commander ban list is they never ban cards for those reasons. Like maybe you could say Hull Breacher was close to the reason.
No, but not really though.
But it wasn't even that popular.
But Hull Breacher was banned for I would say Hull Breacher was banned for like the toxic gameplay aspect.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
Yeah. Whereas, I don't think Kenrith is really banned for toxic gameplay. It's banned...
For Golos.
Sorry, not Kenrith. It's banned presumably for, I guess, getting rid of diversity, being overly prevalent, and being really good, right? Because no one's going to say Golos isn't good. Golos is a good commander. You heard it here first, guys.
Golos was very good. I played against a few Golos decks, and they were always pretty okay, but not worse than anything else I saw.
Obviously, Golos enables a lot of powerful things, right? Like getting Field the Dead, getting your Gaia's Cradle, whatever you need, or just, casting extra turn spells off the top or something like that. It's very good, obviously. But, I don't know. I think it's a dumb ban. That being said, I don't really care that much that it's banned, honestly. So I'm going to, just to put a pin on it, overall, I'm gonna abide by the ban list. And I'm cool with the Golos ban, but I think it was wrong, I guess, what I'm saying.
I'm fine with it too, but that's easy for me to say as somebody who never played with Golos or never had a Golos deck or wanted to make a Golos deck. Do you think this might qualify as one of the most feel-bad bannings in recent history in Commander?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It's a very popular commander.
Yeah. This makes me think back to Modern, the Modern format back in the day when Splinter Twin was banned. That was a really big feel-bad ban for a lot of players because it was like a really, really a lot of people's pet decks and kind of just ruined the whole deck. So a lot of players are people quit the format because of that.
Yeah,
and I wonder if it's the same. The same might happen now.
You might argue that if Golos is banned, you just switch it to Kenrith or whatever other 5-color good stuff commander, but. I think Jimmy and Josh talked about this recently, and Josh actually brought up a good point about this because he was he's on the Commander Advisory group, and he said he was very adamantly against this decision. Yeah. And he mentioned that the same thing about switching out the commander. He's like, well, you can't really do that because in a Golos deck, you probably put a bunch of pretty high CMC spells in there that you might not play in a different deck.
Yeah, or you might be you might not have the deck tuned to be able to color fix as well as you might, because Golos lets you color fix your mana, right?
Yeah, which is a thing that would advantage more budget players.
That's something they mentioned, is that Golos is actually a pretty easy to build budget deck.
Yeah, he's very new player friendly.
Or new players, yeah. So overall, I don't like the ban, but what are you gonna do? That's my take.
Yeah, it was. I didn't expect there to be another. We had mentioned on a recent episode how we felt like things were in a pretty good place, and we didn't think we were going to see any bannings or unbannings soon.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, to me, they seem to be more aggressive with bannings lately. Do you feel that same way?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Honestly, I just have no idea. I mean, like, they have definitely banned a couple cards recently, but I mean, I don't know. I don't. It seems weird though, right? Because the format's only growing bigger and bigger, so there's only more people to get mad, right?
I don't remember the last time though. They have these quarterly announcements.
Yeah,
that there was a back-to-back between announcements. Like we just had Hull Breacher. That was the last quarter.
Yeah, you could argue. I mean, yeah, I don't know. You could argue that the cards that are getting banned, you could argue that it's something to do with power creep, because, like, if there was no Hull Breacher type card, there wouldn't have been a need for that to get banned, and then the Kenneth ban wouldn't have seemed so crazy,
that,
right?
And there's more Magic cards being printed than there used to be.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of Commander-focused sets and stuff. Maybe that's why. Yeah, but I think that's all I have to say about the Golos and the Worldfire changes. What about you, Eli? Anything to say?
Yeah, I think that's it. Interesting. It was shocking and
very,
surprising.
very shocking. I thought it was a joke.
Please let us know what you think about the bannings on bannings. The Worldfire thing, I could care less about that. I mean, I feel like nobody really was asking for that, but I also feel like maybe it makes sense that if you're going to ban things, you should try and unban. They want to keep the list somewhat small, so we can only speculate on that. But it seems to me like it's probably a good idea to reevaluate some things on the ban list and try and keep that list as small as you can. But maybe you should just keep it small by keeping Golos off the ban list,
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe that's the right play.
All right, well, I think that's about all we have here. So, EDHTakes, we're getting up there. We're getting near 100 subscribers. Pretty poggers.
So close.
Yeah, subscribe and follow the Twitter
subscribe.
And stuff. And then unsubscribe when we get to 99, just to prank us. But yeah, I'm Spencer Cook.
And I've been Elijah Samuelson. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll be back hopefully soon.